Answer some of the questions that are there, but before we do that, I want to just ask a question. This would be for the men first, just by show of hands. How many of you think that you really know what makes your wife tick? This is for the men. For the men. How many of you really feel like you really know what makes your wife tick? If you know what I mean by that word tick. You really understand the way that she communicates, right? Okay? Eric is afraid to raise his hand. Okay, Paul. Okay? All right. Okay? You really understand, you know your wives. You know, what does that scripture say in 1 Peter? It says, husbands, dwell with them according to what? Knowledge, right? So when you really think about what that means that God is commanding you to live with them, because dwell means to live with them according to knowledge. So what knowledge is? Knowing what makes her tick, knowing how to communicate with her, knowing what you should or should not say. That's probably more important than anything else, right? Right? But you have to know exactly what type of communication needs to happen and how she's going to respond to that kind of communication, right? Okay? And then in Ephesians 5:33, it talks to the wives. It says that we ought to reverence our husbands, right? So how do we know what it means to reverence our husbands? In order to reverence your husband, that means you have to honor him, you have to respect him, and in order for you to be able to do that, you have to know what he defines as respect and honor, right? So a lot of things fall under those two words by way of the definition. It's going to mean everything across the board, how we communicate with them, how we treat them in public and private, what little things that we do for them that makes them respond in a certain way. So in a nutshell, all of that is realized, the knowledge and the reverence, by way of how we communicate. Now, communication can be done both verbally and also by way of this demonstration by the nonverbal things as well, right? So what we're going to do today is a little bit of an exercise that is going to help each one of us to understand exactly what our personality traits are, so that way the other person that we will be involved or may be involved in a relationship with, once that is become known, that puts us in a better position on how to properly deal with the other person now that we know, oh, this is what her personality is like, or oh, this is what his personality is like, and here's the reason why. I don't know if any of you have ever taken an assessment through an employer, but oftentimes jobs will give you an assessment. Oftentimes that might be done through the hiring process, or maybe later on just through a team building exercise. And there's different categories that there's different tests, there's different types of labels that they would, group a personality trait in. I can remember the first time I took one, I was told that I fit into what's called a kinesthetic type of personality trait, which meant that I don't like the fluff. I don't want to hear the descriptive scenario. As an example, they gave you something to speak about after they showed you a slideshow. And and the slideshow they showed a picture of a sun, I remember a sidewalk with a fence, and there were some other little things in there. So they just said, Dawn, how do you describe that? So I was just walking down the sidewalk and it took me 2 minutes. That's how I described it. Then there was another person who had what was called an illustrative personality type. And this person was talking so long about what they saw, I just wanted them to stop talking. It was like, oh my gosh, I saw a white picket fence, and there was like a blue jay over there, and there was a red robin over there, and the grass was like, green, and there was some dandelions there, and and I was like, I didn't even notice any of that. But we took the same path in terms of what we saw, but we communicated it differently because we had a different response or feeling to what we saw. Now, although I didn't think that it was important to verbalize all the different things that I saw, I still was able to describe exactly what I saw and how that impacted me. But the other person, the way that they described it, was really important to them because that's how they felt as they observed things. So, if I'm going to be in a relationship with that other person, knowing that I'm a kinesthetic type and they're the illustrative type, what needs to happen? Okay, I need to be more sympathetic to listen to how they communicate, because if I try to cut them off, Say, you know what, I don't hear about all that. I just want to know, look, you got to the end of the sidewalk, okay? Let's talk about something else now. Well, that would be offensive to them, right? Now, women, most women, not all, and I'm not in that category, I guess you could say, most women do have a tendency to take the longer version. But believe it or not, a lot of men do too, okay? In the age of cell phone usage, we find that even more of a characteristic trait amongst men. Believe it or not, more men spend more time, and I read a survey, on cell phones than women do. Right?
I can see that.
They do. They spend more time on cell phones than women do, okay? They do. If you look at the average usage on a male's telephone bill as compared to a woman's telephone bill, and this is where the statistics came from, the number of minutes of usage is higher on a man's phone, on a male's phone, than it is typically on a woman's phone. So, understanding that, okay, that also gives a clue that there is a need or want, very likely, in more conversation if you're in a male-female relationship as compared to what maybe you might not have thought. So, what we're going to do now is, and the reason why I wanted to separate couples is I want you to go ahead and take a few minutes on your handout, in your book. There are some columns, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. At the very top of the page, there is a legend that tells you how to answer the little questions or the statements that are in each column. 0 meaning not at all, meaning that does not fit my personality trait at all. Number 1 means you're going to put a number 1 in that little slot next to the word, saying that, yeah, that somewhat fits my personality style. Or number 2, this mostly fits my personality style. And then number 3, this is me. Okay? So when and every single slot has to have an answer, 0, 1, 2, or 3. And then when you get to the end of the column, total up your column. Go ahead and start.
On the left side?
Okay, at the very top of the column, write the word right on top.
Is anyone, are you guys feeling comfortable to air? Okay, just say something if it's a little, gets warm.
You okay? That's
Unless
not real.
it's warm. Unless it's warm.
At the very top of the first column to your left, write the word lion. The second column, write the word otter, O-T-T-E-R. The third column, write the word golden retriever. And the last column, write the word beaver, B-E-A-V-E-R, okay? Now, I would like for you to take a look at your total scores on the bottom. If your highest score is under the column lion, stand up. If your total score is under the column lion, stand up.
The only 2 lions are here.
Come on, stand up if you're, okay? What was your number? Penny?
54.
Ooh, okay. And I'm sorry, dear, what's your name? What was your number?
38.
38? Okay, what was your number?
48.
48, you just kind of not always standing up there. Okay, so lions, so these are our lions, okay? So lions, you can sit down. We're going to talk a little bit about lions, okay?
Uh-oh.
We're going to talk just a little bit about lions. Turn your page. Lions, according to surveys, based upon personality tests and all of that, are are considered to be your leaders. So according to how you assessed yourself today, we have 3 leaders in this room. Okay? We have 3 leaders in this room, and that is according to how they perceive their personalities to be. Okay? Now, lions are leaders, according to these survey statistics. They are usually the bosses at work, or they think they are. Okay? And that's normally important because we know in the workplace that we know in the workplace we normally have a mixture of both, right? those that are always in charge, and those that are always acting as if they are in charge, okay? So those normally fit into those personality traits, okay? All right. They are decisive, bottom line folks who are not watchers or listeners. They love to solve problems. So they are always looking for that. So those are real good strengths, if you fall into that category. Unfortunately, if they don't tone down their aggressiveness, their natural dominating traits can sometimes cause problems for others, okay? So areas of growth is that lions could sometimes learn that meaningful communication takes time, and they can also benefit by slowing down. Okay? The strength of a really good leader is determined by his or her willingness to follow. And how do we know that? Because the scripture says in Matthew 4:19, and he saith unto them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. So Jesus is really laying out what actually qualifies for a good leader. Those that he was talking to when he said this were the disciples. And he was in the process of making them leaders in charge of sharing the gospel out. So the first character trait of a good leader is that they have to be a follower. Okay? All right. If your highest score was in the honor column, stand up.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Oh my gosh! Oh my goodness! Look how many more! Oh, Belinda, is your highest score? Belinda, is your highest score not? Okay, you don't want to stand up. So wait a minute, don't sit down. Don't sit down yet. Let's take a good look. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have a lot of otters here. Go ahead and have a seat, otters. Okay.
Hold on, I didn't get all the names.
You ain't right.
That's why we don't get anything done.
Yeah.
We just want to order.
That is great. So we have 8 sea otters. When we take these tests, we look at it not just from, outside of the church process, but we also look at the dynamics in terms of demographics and the makeup of our church and the mix of different personalities, so we can determine where our strengths lie and where we need to, place people in different areas. So this is helpful to us as a church body. But sea otters are your entertainers and partiers. That's generally where the personality traits fit. So they're your entertainers and partiers. Now I want you to think of your last visit at a zoo. Do you not always stop at the exhibit to see the sea otters, and why? It's normally very crowded when you see them because they're entertaining. They're always swimming around, they're party showers, they like to really play in front of the crowd and things like that. They are really very entertaining to look at. They really are. So they're entertainers. Sea otters are excitable and they love to yak. Okay? They have the gift of gab normally, right? They normally, not always, but this is how you assess yourself. Now, this is only because of you that you've been identified as a sea otter. Baby sea otters cry a shrieking wee sound when they are left alone. They do not like to be left alone. See, this is the reason why we want to do this away from the spouse. We can go this out.
Right, don't leave us alone.
At least when I'm alone.
They do not like to be left alone. They whistle and they whine when they're upset. And they are great at motivating others, and they need to be in an environment where they can talk and have a voice on major decisions. Is that true? Is that true of yourselves? Would you say so? Let's be honest, okay? All right, let's be honest. Now, otters also have an outgoing nature, what makes them great networkers. They usually know people who know people. Okay? They usually know people who know people. And they can be very loving and encouraging unless under pressure. And if so, their tendency is to use their verbal skills to attack. Is that true? area of growth for a otter would be that they have a strong desire to be liked, and that need often overshadows problems in relationships and results into further problems. Otters may benefit from learning to deepen relationships, be serious during serious times, and respect real deadlines and rules. Otters also have a tendency to not follow through on promises. They This is why we separate the couples. This is why we separate the couples.
Everything I do,
It's not all at one size. Now there are some otters that may not fit into all these rules. This is how you answered the test. This is how you answered. Okay. Otters also have the tendency, again, to not follow through on promises. They may suggest and encourage a party or an activity, as an example, but they may not come or bring what they signed up for. Okay. All right. Okay. Here's what
As you are. Did I hear somebody whistling?
Moving along.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we have.
I'm curious.
Yeah,
you
I
guys
was
are.
gonna ask y'all that later though.
I forgot what you were.
An otter.
No, I'm so lying.
I knew you were lying. I knew another
Because
lion.
my score was like a 64.
I knew another lion. I knew another lion.
I'm a lion too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely a lion. So we both have a lot to learn from. 1 Thessalonians 2:4 says this about otters. As we were allowed of God to be put in trust with the gospel, even so we speak, not as pleasing men, but God which trieth our hearts. So if you find that you do lean more towards those man-pleasing characteristics types, that would be a verse that we can go to gain some balance, okay? If your highest score was in the third column, golden retriever, please stand up. Oh, there should be more ladies. There generally is. There should be more ladies. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Well, look at that. Generally, Okay, Terry, are you a golden retriever? Stand up, Terry. Come on. Generally, come on, stand up. You gotta be honest. Now, generally there are more ladies in that category. So think about a golden retriever. You ladies, you can sit down. Thank you. Golden retrievers are generally referred to as being loyal, extremely loyal. A golden retriever dog as a pet is probably the #1 pet in America. To have a golden retriever dog, that's the most preferred house pet, is a golden retriever. You see more of those in homes. One word describes them: they're loyal. They're loyal. They're so loyal, in fact, that they can absorb the most emotional pain and punishment in a relationship and still stay committed.
Wow.
I got that on tape.
That is funny. That table is an interesting table. Okay? So they can still stay committed. They're great listeners. They're empathetic and warm encouragers. However, they tend to be such pleasers that they can have great difficulty being assertive in a relationship when it's needed.
I remember the day that Sandra gave me a book. It said how to be more assertive. I was so offended,
But you know, but see, isn't this helping us to understand the differences though? Because this truly, as you are answering these questions, really describing yourself, because you're the one that filled out the number. This is really helping Lysandro to understand your wife and so forth and so on, because that's how we see ourselves. And how we see ourselves is really important. And then it's also more important for the other to see ourselves as we see ourselves, so that way we know if Mary is a very loyal and not as assertive person, we need to be sensitive to that. Not just Lysandro, but all of us, because as a church body, we have relationships amongst each other. So as we get to know each other better because of things like this, we know how to have a better relationship with one another. So golden retrievers should avoid being so supportive that they support problems as well, okay? Put your foot down sometimes, say, I'm not going for that. Just every now and then. But you gotta practice to be able to do that, because it's outside your comfort zone. These people are true codependents. They also need to learn to confront issues when necessary. They have a tendency to push major issues under the rug. Why? Because it's easier to do that than to deal with it, but then you harbor it inside, okay? Proverbs 3, 5, and 7, trust in the Lord with all thy heart, lean not into thy own understanding, and all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. When in fact we are so assertive, so non-assertive, the real issue is that we're not trusting God to deliver us from those issues. Because it's okay to say, Lord, you know what, I can't do anymore. I've tried everything I could do. Maybe I don't have the courage to be as assertive as I can. Lord, can you help me with that? So that's what it comes down to. If your highest score was a beaver, please stand up. Oh my goodness, look at this table here. This is just surprising. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that was it? Did anybody not stand up? Are we missing somebody?
Did Paul stand up?
Paul, did you? Paul did. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So we have some beavers there. Beavers, you can go ahead and have a seat. Now these are your perfectionists. These are your perfectionists. Beavers, and has anybody ever gone to a zoo where you actually saw a beaver dam? It's the most interesting piece of work you will ever see. You know, where they have it like through a window display so you can kind of see the inside working of it. It's by truly the grace of God or God's work in itself that a beaver has the engineering skill to be able to build something like that, have it be in the water, and it's dry inside. With these escape tunnels and these different rooms and everything, that they have rooms where they sleep, where they store the food, different passageways. It's a very magnificent structure. And it has to be, you know, so that's why a beaver is associated with being a perfectionist. So, beavers have a strong need to do things right and by the book. In fact, they're the kind of people who actually read instruction manuals, okay? They're great at providing quality control in an office environment, and they will thrive in any situation that demands accuracy, such as accounting, engineering, you know, anything that requires an articulated view. Because rules, consistencies, and high standards are so important to beavers, they're always the ones that are going to check you on something too. Always. You know, if you say something, this is the rule, and if you deviate from the rule, they're going to let you know because you're a beaver. Okay? They're going to let you know. They're often frustrated with the mate who doesn't share these same characteristics. Despite deep feelings for those they love, beavers should learn to communicate their softness and warmth in a way that's felt and clearly understood by others. Okay? So what's an area of growth for a beaver? Beavers need to accept that it's all right to also make a mistake. Okay? Not just from themselves, but also others as well. Okay? Because no one is perfect. Okay? So that's an area for beavers to consider. Okay? It's all right for everybody to make a mistake from time to time. Okay? Which means that you don't always have to point it out every time somebody makes a mistake. Okay? Not every time. Okay? Okay? You gotta pick your battles. And it is also healthy to call for help when you're struggling. You don't always have to be concerned about being perceived as being a perfectionist. Beavers will also benefit by trusting that others can accomplish good results as well, and to allow for the other opportunity for others to make mistakes again. James 3:1 says this, "My brethren, be not many masters," which means a micromanager, "knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation." So if you work at a place where your boss is always over your neck looking and all that, that's called a micromanager. That's where this verse fits. Okay? Same rules apply in ministry. Same rules apply in your relationships with your spouse, your boyfriend, your children, and all of that. Okay? So now that we know that we are in one of those categories or the other, and now that we know that your friends, the people that you're in relationships with, fall into one of those categories or the other, I think that we have a little bit more insight as to how we can properly deal with them, okay? In summary, a box of crayons generally, describes all of that. We can learn a lot from crayons. Some are sharp, some are pretty, some are dull, while others are bright. Some have some weird names, but they've all learned to live together in the same box. In the same box. Same rules apply to the church, okay? Thank you for that assessment. We're going to move on to the next one.